I am so excited to have you on. I've given my listeners a bit of your background, but the only thing I didn't mention was where you're located. So, where are you?
So I'm in Calgary, Alberta. So we're straight north of Montana.
Okay, great. Well, I'm from Montana, so I know where that is, but I do have a global audience, so we'll point people in that direction, where to find your website, all the information about you. But really, where I want to start, Ria, is tell me about energy medicine. If that's even what we can call it, I'm going to let you run with your expertise.
Well, I do a variety of different things, and so I've kind of incorporated many modalities or foundational, I guess, energetic sciences into one method, where we use sound therapy, but we also use some testing and correcting from applied kinesiology. There's a lot of Chinese medicine in there while we're doing assessments and correcting and balancing meridians. We pull in the Vedas, so we're working with the chakras. So, like, I have a philosophy about all of this, and it kind of extends, through medicine, through religion, through all of our world beliefs that at one time humanity was likely separated. Initially, there was the initial separation, and if you look at it even through the lens of religion, it starts to make sense, where each religion was given a piece of the truth, and this is why everybody fights. And so when you look at, when you compare that to medicine and traditional healing foundations, it's kind of the same thing. Everybody, all cultures were given a little piece of the truth. And so it's when you investigate and research history that you find, by pulling all of this knowledge together, that now you start to find a really powerful way of looking at the body and the energy bodies and the emotions and the mind.
Thank you for explaining that. I love the work that you do. You had also touched on a couple of my favorite topics, which are meridian lines and chakras. So for people maybe hearing about this information for the first time, can you give us an explanation of what those are?
Yeah, so they're again ways of looking at how subtle energy is distributed. So, like, if we kind of look to physics, where we're told that 95% of the known universe is empty, we all should know by now that that's a little bit of BS, and that it contains all of the subtle matter from which everything in reality is created. So when you look at the meridians and the chakras are a system that brings in more gross energy, larger particulate energy, and it more has to do with themes in a person's life. So, for example, like the root being the theme of safety, security, and do I belong in the world? And maybe the solar plexus being, how do I see myself and how do others see me, and how is that mirrored back to me? And so if you're working with somebody with chakras, you're going to work on more of these larger themes in their life. Whereas when it gets down to the meridians, that's now the system that's, fairly superficial, underneath the skin. And this is now like a network of wires that is interconnected through all of the organs, tissues, glands, etc. in the body. So now that information from the chakras and from the subtle bodies and from the biofield is brought in, and it's distributed to me through the meridians, the acupuncture points, and the nadis. So, like, again, I look at it all together in context, because that's where I have found in clinic that it makes sense for healing people.
I would love to hear your story and how you came into these healing modalities.
So yeah, like, I have a bit of a convoluted path. I wasn't always doing this. I was actually an architect for a good while, which I think was part of, again, everything that the universe brings into your life, I think, is part of the process. And I learned incredible problem solving skills being an architect, as well as how to really think in that three-dimensional space where you can really see things in your mind's eye, and that's all part of the manifesting recipe. But I guess from a young age, I was born into a family with a dad that wasn't well. He had heart problems. And so I also think that part of my abilities come from being hypersensitive to his health, and always having that big biofield of empathy, reaching out to make sure that he was okay. He had his first open heart surgery when I was only 7 years old. And I remember being in the hospital and seeing him with all these tubes coming in and out. And as an only child and a sensitive child, you know, your parents are your world, they're your universe. So I think we become very hyper connected. And this is where, you know, I think all of these little things that happen throughout a person's life, they pre-wire you for having abilities that you can discover and bring to life later on.
I really appreciate you explaining and sharing your story. And I really feel what you say when your parents are your whole world. But the word that I heard in there was biofield. And I really want to dive into that because I feel like your work is focused on the whole person and not just bits and
Yeah.
pieces. So, can we go into that?
Yeah, for sure. So the biofield's a part of it. I kind of subscribe to the Russian four pillars of health, you know, where we look at the mind, the emotions, the body, um, and the last one that is not coming to my mind, but anyway, the four pillars. And so, like, the biofield is a part of that. It's the energy that's created by your heart. To me, it's really your heart and your mind are creating electric fields. And so, roughly, you know, the human biofield has been measured to be about 6 feet in an average person. And so we hold things in this field. We hold emotions in this field. We hold memories in this field. Like, I think it's a lot to assume that our brains are holding all of this. I feel like a lot of this information is out in the field, and there's good research and examples out there. Like, for example, the telephone. There were two gentlemen that went to patent the telephone on the same day from different countries. And so when we have an idea and a thought, and especially when you speak life into it by giving it words, it's one thing when it's in your own head, but it's another thing when you speak it into the universe. This goes somewhere. This has an energy. This has a thought form, and it has an electromagnetic quality in nature. And so I feel like our memories too there's a lot of this that's held within the field. You can also look at people who have had brain injuries, and for years they're unable to connect to their memories, and then one day something just shifts and they're able to reconnect. Or people that we know have a very, very thin brain, you know, like rather than a whole brain, they have this really thin slice. It's almost like bologna, but yet, you know, until science has some purpose to go digging in their head, they're a normal person with a normal IQ. So if their brain is the thickness of a slice of bologna, where is all this being kept? You know, it's maybe not what we think. So there's maybe parts and parcels of the brain that are connecting to this other energetic information. And to me, when I work on the biofield, like, it's quite unbelievable. Even distant sessions, which I find almost to be a little bit more powerful because you don't have that physical body that's getting in the way of what you're doing. So you can really focus on that energy body, and the amount of information that I'm able to dig up out of somebody's field. Like, honestly, every day I do this, I'm shocked at what comes up. Like, it's still a surprise for me, where afterwards I'll run to my husband and I'll be like, you won't believe what I was able to come up with in this. Like, it's, you know, I guess some people would maybe call it psychic. I don't know if I really like that word because I feel like it has negative connotations, but it really is like a way of, to me, mathematically or geometrically reading the information of somebody's life. And it's shocking. Like, when you pull something out and the person on the table is freaking out saying, oh my God, like, how could you possibly know this about me? So there's something to it.
I love that. I love that so much. And that's something that I really resonate with, which is why I wanted to have you on the show because of the stories that you shared. So when you mentioned biofield, it reminds me of a story a couple months ago. My mom had come to visit, and I live in New York City. So I went outside to wait for her, wait for the Uber to drop her off. And this homeless gentleman walked past me. But before he walked past me, maybe 6 to 8 feet, I just felt his energy, and it was really scary. And he was talking gibberish, and he came up to me and he was saying things like, these bad things are going to happen on this day. And like immediately I went from like being excited to see my mom to like my heart was beating so fast. I was really scared. I actually missed my mom walking into my building because I was so distracted by this guy. So, can you share some stories? What have you learned about the biofield?
Well, like I say, it seems like, and I studied biofield tuning, so that's kind of for me a little bit, and it's not all of the story, but it's certainly a chunk of it. And learning how to use tuning forks, which for me really became my language. I'm very clear everything, but something I think probably one of my stronger ones is clairaudience, and so using the tuning forks, somehow I'm able to create a resonance between myself and the person that I'm tuning. So they'll be laying on the table or whatever, and it is those experiences in me that when I hit, an age, let's say we hit age 5, and I'll start to get feelings, or I'll start to get visions. I might get a taste in my mouth. I'll definitely get it in my body, because again, the consummate empath, right? You're always going to feel it in your body. And then I'll be kind of shown, or I'll feel an experience that I've lived through that is mirrored in this person. So I'll try to describe it in a way where I'm not describing my own life, but rather, again, like, what am I feeling in my body? What am I hearing? What am I seeing as imagery? And I'll just put it out there. And it's really trust. Like, it's learning to trust what you get and having the confidence to say it out loud, that you're not going to be rejected. I feel like when you're building, because everybody has intuition, it's just been beaten out of us in the indoctrinated school system, but we all were born with it. This is a gift that everybody has. So don't ever think that I'm special or other people are special. It's just that I've taken the time to develop it. I'm a very pragmatic, also can be very, very, very left-brained and, thought consumed. So I'm not always my right-brained esoteric woo-woo self. But it's like when you marry the two, right? So then you can start to think of it. You can come a little bit out of that right brain into your left brain and think of it more logically. And now, how am I going to say this back to my client that it's going to be meaningful, so that we're going to shift something that's emotionally, mentally, physically, or spiritually broken in them? What can I say to shift that? So then you have to really rely on your smart self, that you're not going to say too much or too little. So it's a balance, and it's only through clinical practice and thousands of sessions that you get to the point where you have this utter divine confidence, and you're able to just let yourself go in the moment to say the right thing. And it shifts people. Like, I see people come in, and I really should start doing before and after photos, because people will come in and they look beaten down or tired or sad, or black eyes, puffy eyes. And when they leave, they look different. They look like they've lost years off their life. They look happier, healthier, glowing, all sorts of different things. So, like, it's a very interesting method. And I, like you say, I have my own version of it. I don't do the biofield tuning, the pure biofield tuning, the way that it's taught anymore. I have my own methodology where I incorporate so much more into it. Like you say, we also look at the body, the spirit, the mind, the other things that go along with it. The biofield is 25% of the problem, but we need to fix 100%. So you need to look at all of the ways that people experience health and healing.
You mentioned that you can help someone heal with telemedicine, or maybe telemedicine isn't the right word, but you can do Zoom calls, video conference calls to
Yeah.
help people heal. What's that like? How do you do that long distance?
So again, it's important to have that 3D mind, or that, at least that conceptual ability, where I keep them on. Like, I'll use like you say, a video conferencing, and I want to see them, so I don't do it over the phone. I need to see their reactions, their body, their face, and I see energy around them. So I don't always tell people that, but since I was a kid, I've been able to see energy around people. And so I like to have people on video, because I can see what's going on. And on a really good day, I see quite far out. And on a not great day, I'll still see like about this much. So it still gives me some information. But like, one story I can think of that's just like it still amazes me to this day. So I had a lady come to me via a mutual colleague, and she lives 2,000 kilometers away from me in another province. And she was experiencing basically acute lung failure, and the doctors were unable to tell her why, but it was not a good prognosis. And they had her on high doses of prednisone to help reduce the body's attack of the lungs. And so I worked with her for about a year. And at first it was like every week, and then it was every 2 weeks, then it was every 4 weeks. And so working on, again, all the different energy systems. So like imagining her laying on my table, using my own body as a surrogate. So testing the alarm points to check the meridians, mapping that out, figuring out her control and flow cycles. Where is this energy going? What is the relationship between the 5 elements and the meridians within them? Looking at whether she has any negative energy or entity attachments, checking the chakras, measuring the biofield. Is she an empath out of control? Like there's about 60 things that I go through each session when I do these kind of, I call them infinite body sessions, because we're kind of looking at all the infinite energies that make up the physical body. And then where I found things that would be out or irregular energies, I would correct them in clinic, and probably mostly using sound or using my Tenant device. So I have like a Tenant device that's made by Avazia, and it's like Russian scanner technology. So it's like a frequency device, and I use it when I'm doing these type of sessions. I'll use it with a scalar wand so that I can send the frequencies. And then the interesting part of it is at the end, I will then make up a list of energy exercises for the client. And it is absolutely necessary and required that they do these exercises morning and evening. That's what gets them better. I'm just the problem solver, and I create the map for health and healing. They got to do the work. And she did. She never missed her exercises. She actually had her own Tenant device, so she was able to correct herself. And so her lungs went from like the 27th percentile to the 70th percentile. So she was like getting winded walking around her kitchen. Now she could walk like up to 2 miles in a day. Like, it's just a miracle. And, you know, they basically wrote her off that you're going to die. Oh, and off the prednisone, tapered off the prednisone, all the drugs gone. And then, you know, at that kind of point, she took some time. And this is where I feel like for her, the real emotional healing began, and seeking out different ways of addressing and connecting with that parts of herself that were wounded at some point in her life. So then she went through like another sort of process and transition, which, you know, again, increased and improved health, healing, and vitality and joy even more. So I guess like what I'm saying is it really depends on the person. You have to meet them where they're at. Do they need the emotional work first? Do they need the physical work first? Do they need the biofield work first? You got to know where to start and where to go next, so that you're taking them through this in a way that's going to be meaningful to them.
What an incredible story. Thank you for sharing
Yeah,
that.
you're
I feel
welcome.
like it's such a disservice in the conventional medical space that we specialize in something, right? Like if someone has a shoulder
Yeah,
problem, you just want to see a shoulder specialist, whereas that could be some hidden trauma, a frozen shoulder, some like deep rooted issues.
right.
And the exercises that you spoke about, it reminded me of when I first learned about loving loving kindness meditation. And when I cross a road, a crosswalk in New York, and someone cuts me off, they drive through it, instead of getting angry, I say, may they be happy, may they be healthy, may they be free from worry. And I imagine that they need that in that moment, but then it also makes me feel a lot better. So, can you walk us through what some of these exercises are?
Yes, for sure. Yeah. So it might be holding points on the body. It might be tracing meridians either forwards or backwards. It might be a biofield exercise. I took the Eden Energy Medicine program, and it is an excellent program. I feel like it was a really good foundation for what I do. I don't necessarily like do their protocols. In fact, I don't do their protocols, but what I learned was invaluable. It's an excellent program. And so I use a lot of their exercises. And I feel like there's a lot that I have shifted in my own life, in my own, you know, kind of health struggles, just using some of their exercises. So I incorporate that, incorporate some stuff from qigong. I took some medical qigong, and there's some good exercises in there too. And then the rest of it is just like intuitive, weird stuff that I'll get in a download. So sometimes before a client comes, like especially a new client, I'll either have a dream about it, or in the in between, you know, in between sleep and waking, in the in between when you're really in that alert and aware stage, I'll get like a download of information of what I'm supposed to give them as an exercise. So I connect to it in all sorts of ways. Some of it's learned and some of it is just highly through intuition.
Can we practice on strengthening our intuition?
Totally. Yeah. I think for people who really want to strengthen their intuition, get the book Hands of Light by Barbara Brennan and read it 20 times because like she is this woman. I have just utter reverence for her, and I feel so sad that I never got to meet her while she was living, because I feel like she's a soul connection, a deep, maybe part of my soul group. Her books, she has 3 books, and this is a woman who literally does not waste a single word. It took me probably a year and a half to read Hands of Light, because you'll read a paragraph and it's so packed with information that you have to go sit on it. It's not like other books where you can read a chapter and assimilate it right away. Her words, every word has so much meaning and so much weight. She doesn't waste a single moment. And so that she had some incredible connection. She was like the Nikola Tesla of the spiritual realm, in my opinion. So if anybody wants to learn intuition and how to develop their clairs, I would highly recommend doing the deep dive into Barbara Brennan. The other book that I will refer people to that I love is Cindy Dale's Subtle Body book. And it's a little bit more of an overview. Like, it doesn't have the depth that Barbara Brennan's work has, but her work, Cindy Dale's work, is also, it's excellent, like just excellent research, and the way that she's written it. It gives you a lot of insight into how all of these systems work together.
Okay, well, I'll make sure that we link those in the show notes so people can find them.
Yeah.
So we were talking about energy. You had mentioned tuning forks and a tenet device. I
Yeah.
feel very new to this, although I feel like I have an idea about it. So let's dive into it. Tell me, what are these devices that you use?
So I do the most of my stuff with tuning forks, and I have my own brand of tuning forks. So they align with the method that I teach, which is called the Infinite Energy Method. So we use them for, well, I mean, everything. Listening to the field, listening to the nervous system. I train students how you listen to the nervous system using tuning forks. We use them for grounding. We use them for connecting our crown to the cosmos for that yang energy. We use them for balancing chakras and tracing meridians. We use them on beginning and end points and neurolymphatic points. So the tuning forks make up a lot of it. Additionally, I have a set, and this is an interesting story that you might be interested in. So I was really kind of consumed during this whole COVID thing about the DNA damage that was going to be happening, for those people that took injections. And so I meditated for just over a year, and I wanted frequencies that were going to heal the damage to the DNA from these mRNA altering vaccines. I mean, you can't really call them vaccine, injection. And one day I was actually on the phone with a client, and I started getting numbers in my head, and I didn't even say goodbye. I hung up the phone, because I know me, and when this stuff starts coming through me, if I don't get on to recording it, I lose it, because it's not my mind, right? It's like something that comes through you. So I wrote down all these frequency numbers as I got them, and then of course called her back and just said, "Oh, I'm sorry, my phone died." But that evening I really had to look at these numbers, trying to figure out, what do these frequencies mean? So, in numerology, how you like add up numbers, you'll add up things like your birth date or whatever to get your life path number. So I started adding up all these numbers, and they were totaling 369, 369 when I added them all up. So already I'm thinking, oh my God, this is some sort of like a quantum healing codes, or it fits along with Tesla's idea of 369, right? And then I continued to look at them, and I'm starting to look at, well, what if I subtract one from the other? So I laid them out, and then I got the distance between each of them, put them in order from highest to lowest. And I had just finished taking like a neuro class with a sound genius, Dr. Jeffrey Thompson, the foremost sound genius on the planet. And I realized, oh my God, these are brainwave frequency spreads. But they're not the typical. They're a little bit atypical. So I had those made into tuning forks. Like I first played around with them on a tone generator, and that wasn't going anywhere. Excuse me. So I then had them made into tuning forks. And so after studying, like I say, with Dr. Jeff, he does a lot with binaural or brain entrainment. So I've been using these tuning forks. I started, just playing with them, using them around my head. And I found that within 30 seconds to a minute, I could get myself into this crazy deep state of meditation. Like I was just gone. So throughout the year, I was doing practice sessions on clients, trying to figure out how to use these. I bought an EEG so that I could watch what their brain waves were doing. And then I decided to do this as an independent study because I'm still working on my PhD at university. So I did this as an independent study class and was able to then, do like a clinical trial on a bunch of my clients. And so I did that one on trauma, acute trauma versus trauma that's old, right? Something that's acute versus chronic. And I found some very interesting things about the brainwave frequencies in acute versus chronic, where acute, you'll accumulate a lot more delta frequencies, where it's in that stress, kind of that stress state above alpha, that like low delta. And in trauma that's been a really long time chronic, they'll be flooded with too much beta. So they're always sleepy because, it's kind of pulling you into that low depression, sleepy kind of state. And so then using the tuning forks to entrain higher brainwave frequencies to pull them out of that imbalance. And so I developed a class around this, and it's probably been like our most attended class. It's just crazy using these 6 forks, what you can do.
Wow. Oh my gosh, it sounds so cool that you had numbers coming to you and this is what you've really aligned yourself to. It reminds me of a story. I was interviewing someone a few months back, and my husband's Australian, and he has to have some injections in order to come back and live in America. We're doing long distance right now. And so my guest that I had on my show, who I really like and we're really aligned with, I said, do you have any supplements or a protocol or anything you would recommend for recovery? And he said, Ashley, I'll tell you the first thing. He needs to put a healing force around him. And that made me so excited to talk to you, Rea. So how do we, unless it's maybe taking your course, tell me.
And then just dipped and then called himself the goat.
Oops. My apologies. Sorry, something weird happened with my phone. Honestly, a voice just started talking. I've never had that happen. I looked over and I thought, am I hearing things here? Sorry. So yeah, like for anybody who's been forced to kind of take these crappy injections, absolutely, like doing a supplement protocol will help to a degree, but it's really when you're kind of strengthening that biofield where you're, working on strengthening that subtle energy that's around you, because our nested subtle bodies, they extend roughly out to the fingertip, and they live within this biofield. And their role is to take that fine particulate matter from the outer environment and then convert it and bring it in. And then the next layer does its job and brings it in, and so on until it becomes your etheric double, which is what is templating your body. So doing things like using tuning forks, around the body in his biofield, and using these brain entrainments where you're using your own frequencies to heal. This was the gist of what I got from this download, this whatever you want to call it, session, was that our brain makes frequencies, and it is those frequencies that heal your physical body. You don't need all this external stuff. So that's like the meat and potatoes of how you get better, is you enhance what you already have.
Yes. Oh, I love that you said that. It's kind of the way that I feel when I do Wim Hof breathing. When I'm done,
right?
I just feel amazing. And so, can you give us an example of what these different frequencies feel like?
Like if you're talking about the brainwave ones, so for people, let's say that you're having trouble sleeping, you can't fall asleep. Once you're asleep, you're okay, but it's that falling asleep. you're not able to get yourself into delta, which is where we get that REM sleep. So like for those people, I would say like using like a theta frequency, a binaural theta frequency on either side of your head, and then downshifting that into that delta. Then, sorry if I said beta before, I meant delta. You're getting yourself down into that delta frequency where then you can relax and go to sleep. And like I've done this twice where I was so wound up. I remember the one time I actually had a coffee late in the day, which I know I shouldn't do. And so like I was using these forks to get myself to sleep, these delta forks. And at one point I woke up in the middle of the night and they were on my pillow beside my head, one on either side. Like I literally fell asleep doing it. So how they sound and feel is to me, they create like a psychoactive part of you. So each frequency will resonate with something different. So we have forks that go right from very low, like I say, they're in that 2 hertz, all the way up to 4,096 hertz. And so there's like a range of things that you'll notice that'll happen. And really, I mean, I guess I just invite people to experiment and play with these things because every one of them does something. And you're not going to hurt yourself with tuning forks or frequencies, because through resonance, through physics, your body will take what it needs. Let's say you're using a 190 and your body needs 188. It's going to take what it needs from that 190 and it's going to convert that. It's not like you're going to injure yourself or make anything worse.
Rea, I know my husband knows how to tune a guitar, but when I think of tuning forks, I'm not sure how they work. So can we just go buy them online and then expect better sleep?
Well, I think you'd have to get the right forks for sleeping. I mean, there's definitely forks for each type of thing that you're trying to achieve. So like I can't really speak to, products that other people have made, but the ones that I have are ones that I've bought from other people that I've used. I guess I could give some info on those. So I guess, for example, like the 528 hertz is good for a lot of things. It's good for heart and throat energy. It's good for clearing a room. Let's say you've had an argument or a fight with somebody. It's good for clearing the room. It is the frequency that will open and shut DNA. So Steve Comiskey is a scientist and researcher who did some research on that, and it literally will open and shut that DNA. So 528 would be used for that. Trying to think of another one. The 4096, it's called an angel tuner. So I use that when I'm working with anybody who's got, negative thought forms, negative energies, negative entity attachments, any of that type of stuff I use to clear that energy. And also to clear the room, after a session, I'll figure eight the room with that rather than using like, what do you call that? Sage. I'm allergic to smoke, so sage is out of the question for me. And the last time I saged my house, I had allergic reactions for days. So now instead of saging, I tuning fork, and it's, honest to God, it's just as effective. It does the same thing. It shifts the energy. If you're feeling like you have low vibrational energy, so depression, sadness, grief, using higher forks that are maybe above the 400 range to bring yourself out of those lower chakra themes and bring yourself up higher. There's infinite number of things we use them for when I'm teaching students how to use them. So that's just a few.
Oh, I love that. And I love those examples. And as you were talking, I was thinking it's somewhat similar, or maybe it has a similar effect when you're around a pet or a plant, or maybe even someone who gives off those good vibes. That's what those good vibes feel like.
Yes.
And it's kind of like the story of all it takes is one person to bring down a group of people if one person is in a bad mood. And so, do you have any advice for lifting up our spirits, getting into a better mood, and just showing up every day with a grateful heart?
Absolutely. Tuning like the heart to the brain would be one area that I would recommend, like using a tuning fork over your head and over your heart, and creating like that entrainment with a higher frequency tuning forks, or using the brainwave tuning forks. I would use like the gamma and the divine bass probably to really increase that frequency. other things that you can do. You can, like I say, you can just do big figure eights in the field. So activating a tuning fork, doing a big figure eight through your biofield, you're going to bring in that mechanical energy turns to electromagnetic in the body. So putting a lot of that sound it moves your body, even if it's on a subtle level. We don't always have to come to a knife fight with a nuclear bomb. Like sometimes, and this is what I love about sound therapy, or the type of sound therapy that I do and teach, is that I kind of look at it as the homeopathics of sound therapy. We're working on that real subtle energy level. So we're not doing any real big shifts. We're doing all these little fine tunings that then become the big shift.
Is there also anything that you can recommend for us to avoid so that we don't get into lower vibration states?
Holy catfish, yes. Especially if a person is sensitive to electromagnetic frequencies. You got to be very careful where you live and choosing the place in the world that's best for you to live. If you have a lot of sensitivities to EMFs, like a big city with a lot of cell stuff going on the roof, probably isn't for you. And I've treated those people who've become electromagnetically sensitive, and they are sick. Like, they're very sick. And so unless and until they move and get away from what's feeding the bad dog, they continue to have ill health. There's not a lot that you can do to shift that, because the constant bombardment, 90-minute session where they're, when they're just living month to month like this, it's kind of becomes a challenge or difficult to shift that. So certainly, like, choosing the place to live that supports your being is important. And then short from that, just all the things that you can do to mitigate the EMFs, using the EMF resistant paint on the walls. That's something that you can do. Shutting off your router at night, or if you're in a climate where you don't need heat or air conditioning at night, just shut the electricity off to your house. Shut it all off. Give yourself that time. Go camping. And I don't mean glamping, I mean go camping where there's no power. Even if you're in a trailer, shut it all down at night. Turn it off. Don't have anything. Just open the windows and breathe the air, and try to get out into nature where there's a lot more, trees giving you influence than cell towers. So all the things that you can do. Develop a meditation practice. And I'm sure everybody on your show probably says this. And it's because it's the truth. There's so much out there that is a falsehood, right? Our religions tell us to give our power to the guru. Our medical system tells us to give our power to the guys in the white coat. Everything is telling you and training you to give your power away to something or somebody. Everything that you need is in here. You don't need to go out there. And it's the same thing with your mind and the truth. You're never going to find the truth on the TV, on the news, or in a newspaper. It's there. It's all the media is owned by the same 5 people. You're just going to get the same story from everybody. So if you really want to connect with the truth and the divine wisdom of who you are and who we are as a species, you're only going to do that by going inwards and finding that internal quiet space where then the universe will share its secrets with you, and you'll get it bit by bit, like I have, and like many other have. And I continue to get it, right? I don't profess to know half of anything. The older you get, the more that you realize you really know nothing. And that you're so fortunate and blessed for every little bit and piece that you get that you can link together. So that would be like my number one advice to people, is go inside and find your truth in there. And that's when you're going to find your humanness and your unity with the rest of humans.
I love that. I love that so much. The way that you spoke was so eloquent, and it makes so much sense. And that's part of the reason for my show is people get to be their own doctor. They get to be their own advocate. You don't have to give the power away. And I feel like exactly what you said, when you come to that realization, you realize you are your own healer, and you can seek out the people who are aligned with you. So I really wanted to ask you, and I would be remiss if I didn't. I was so excited to have you on this show because I don't know anybody else who has the kind of information that you do. But can you tell me about Anthony Holland's work?
Oh, okay, right. Yeah, Anthony Holland. Gee, I love his work. So he's like what I would call sort of a modern day Royal Rife revival type guy. So he was very interested in figuring out the magic of Rife's work, and began doing experiments on a couple of different types of cancer using resonant frequency. And so he was able to then, microscopically, again, this is what was the magic of Rife's work. It wasn't the frequencies. Everybody is like, oh, Rife frequencies, Rife frequencies. That's not the magic. It was the microscope. It was being able to see the pathogen on the slide and then be able to create the resonant frequency that would explode it. So think about like an opera singer, when they hit that high note and they can shatter a wine glass. So that was the true beauty and genius of what Royal Rife discovered was, here's a pathogen, and what frequency can I see under the microscope is going to explode this. And so I feel like Anthony Holland was onto this again, and he figured out how to deal with a couple of different types of cancer. And I kind of remember that I think uterine cancer was one of them. And so you might be able to still find on YouTube, but it's so highly, washed now. But if you can still find it, it's about 14 or 15 years old. He did a TED talk where he shows a video of putting this frequency through these cancer cells and them exploding like in real time. So I feel like probably what more than likely happened is that the US government probably, or whoever these men in black are, went after him. And so he's no longer living in the United States. He's in hiding. And so he has published more research. And I believe that was 2023 that he's published more papers and research from wherever he's living in the world now, but couldn't continue to do this in America, unfortunately, because he was going up against, trying to take food out of Big Pharma's mouth and they didn't like it. But that is the future of healing. And I've known that ever since I was a kid. I remember I used to say to my mom, there's going to come a time where all the operations and everything that we do to shift a human, it's going to happen out here. And my mom would just kind of nod and, oh, that's nice, But it was like this, honestly, it was like this weird knowing that it was just always this knowing that things were going to be different. And I just want to say too, that it's not that I'm totally dissing Western medicine. If you're in a car wreck and your leg is half chopped off, you don't want me waving my tuning forks over your leg, right? You need the best of Western medicine. What I am saying is we need to work together. We need some unity across everything, across cultures, across religion, across genders, across everything. We need unity. We need unity and acceptance and be unoffendable. Walk in the world being unoffendable. Don't let anybody offend you because they don't mean to. They're just hurting.
That's so beautiful. And I feel like we need a team. I need a chiropractor, a personal trainer, a Western medicine doctor for who knows what. Like, it's all coming together. And I wanted to ask you about the sound therapy because I received a Tibetan sound bowl one time. So I don't know much about sound therapy, so I would love to learn about it.
Yeah, well, so I mean, any of these things that you can find and use, they strengthen your energy field. I have a device called a BioWell, and again, it's Russian equipment. I love the Russian stuff. They're just so brilliant. So I bought one of these BioWells and took the training many, many years ago already. And so I'm an advanced BioWell practitioner. I read the biograms as well as, relaying the data that the system itself produces. But what I have found is, so someone will come in, I'll BioWell them, right? Let's say they have 40 joules of energy. And then we'll do a bunch of sound therapy and then we'll rescan them. And so you'll find that the person actually will attain more energy because it's taking that mechanical wave of the sound and it's converting it to electromagnetic energy in the body that the body can use. So sound therapy is electricity. It's like giving your body juice, but in a natural way, not in a unnatural way. Some of the devices that are out there, I would be cautious about. There's a lot of folks that are touting miracles from these devices. And as a bit of a techie, my son and I are kind of techies and we enjoy this auditing equipment. So a lot of these companies, like for a fee, they'll send you the equipment and you can use it for a month and then do an audit and give them back the report. So I've audited quite a few different things. And I would just say to people, like, be careful of like hype. Be careful of like pyramid schemes. If somebody has to sell you a device through a pyramid scheme, it's probably a scam. Do your research, do research on the internet, find studies on these equipments, on these devices. Make sure that somebody is doing actual clinical trials and studies before you buy something. Because like I say, there is a lot of just money grab right now with people wanting so desperately to heal. We're so sick. We're such a sick society from all the drugs and surgeries and just crap out there, that I feel like we have to kind of take a step back and be a little bit more mindful about what we choose, even for sound therapy. So just to be careful and mindful of that. Do some research first before you spend your money.
Is sound therapy related to chanting or making the om sound?
Yeah, like that's definitely more ancient forms. Like anything that cultures have used, whether it's a didgeridoo or the native drumming, it's all designed to take you to those higher states of consciousness, to have those experiences. So you don't always need like mushrooms and all this other stuff. You can get there with frequencies, absolutely. And like I say, I've always been a very good meditator, but for me, like these theta and delta forks, man, they really get me into deep meditation. I'm like gone. So sometimes using sound just to get yourself out of the way is a good way of getting into that higher state.
Let's paint a picture of someone hearing this podcast for the first time, and this information is new to them, but they either know someone or they themselves have a bit of pain, injury, anxiety, something that's unresolved. Where do we start?
Well, I would say to start by finding a practitioner that you can have a good rapport with, that you trust, finding somebody that's got a good varied background with lots of maybe different little bits and pieces of information, so that they're well-rounded. And then committing to the process, because it is a process. Sometimes clients will come to me and it's taken them 30 or 40 years to dig them into the hole that they're in with their health. And so I need a little bit of time to help them get out of that. It's not an instant, fix like a magic bullet. So we need to be patient with ourselves and give ourselves this time. And really what it ends up coming down to, at least in my opinion, is consciousness. The more and more that you become conscious of, the more that you grow and develop your conscious awareness. Like think of Hawkins' scale. I don't know if you're familiar with Power versus Force, David R. Hawkins. That's a book I recommend to everybody. That's like a starting point for understanding you and the universe. And so what he's done in this book, and he's now passed away, but I mean, brilliant work, is he calibrated all of the human emotions. So like shame, fear, guilt, love, all of these emotions are calibrated and given a number using like an applied kinesiology calibration. And so the more that you expand your consciousness and the higher that you get on this scale, I think the goal with humanity right now should be to reach the level of 500. When you are at the level of 500, that's the level of unconditional love. And when you're at that level, you can offset 750,000 lost souls, lost people that are just not there yet. Your energy becomes so powerful. Mathematically, you are outweighing 750,000 others. So like for me, all it would need would be two of me, and I have days where I'm there and then I have days where I'm not. You're not always able to sustain that either, because we're not little demigods. So you'll have days where you're at 500, and then you'll have days where something happens to bring you down as well. But it would only take two people to alter like my city of 1.5 million people. It would take two people. That's it. So like it becomes a numbers game to create this tipping point in the human consciousness, in our human epigenetic field, right? We need to pull ourselves out of fear, which inadvertently is like that level of 65. Fear and shame and guilt they're low levels. Actually, I think fear is 100. So if you think that human consciousness has been sort of resonating around that 200 mark for the last 2,000 years, we dip down a bit, we dip up a bit. And in the early 2000s, we were like a runaway freight train. The human level of consciousness was getting higher and higher, 220, 225. So whatever ancient beings or ancient, control mechanisms there are on this planet to keep humans suppressed had to come up with a pretty good way to lower our consciousness level again. And what better way to do that than a global pandemic? Everybody.
Hey, Rea, we needed more of you during the pandemic.
Oh, I was screaming from the rooftops, but I got suppressed a lot. yeah, on social media, it's quite funny because I used to get, like 100,000 shares, and now I'll get 5. Like I'm clearly being targeted and suppressed. It's like, it's kind of funny in a way that anybody would be afraid of little old me, but it's when you speak the truth, right? That the evil can't handle it. And this is where we need to get clear with this too, is that evil will always try to be evil. It's what it is. It's the people that give it life with their beliefs that are the bigger concern. And that's what hurt me so much during COVID, is that so many people bought the lie. That was a very painful thing for me to go through, to think that there were that many people that would choose the lie over the truth and over the goodness and over what we call God or divine or the universe. So that was my struggle. It wasn't that I was worried about some disease. I never wore a mask. I never put hand sanitizer on. And in fact, I'll tell you a funny story because it'll totally crack you up. There's a guy that I know that works at the Safeway, and I've known him for like 20 years. And he was going to be the COVID Nazi on the day that I was shopping in there. And I told him, I said, this is ridiculous. There is nothing. You are not going to get sick. It is all in your own mind. It is a placebo, nocebo effect. And you're going to make yourself sick if you keep worrying about this. And I said, I'm going to prove it to you. So I bent over and I licked the scanner.
Yes.
Where they rub all the groceries and everybody's touching. And my son was mortified. I thought he was going to die on the spot. And I said, I'm going to come back every week for a month and I'm going to show you that I'm not sick. Because he was like, oh my God, are you crazy? You're going to die. And I'm like, buddy, I'm not. And this is all nuts. And, I went back every week. And on the 4th week, he wasn't there. And I asked where he was, and they said he quit. He wasn't going to be the COVID Nazi anymore because I didn't die. So it was weird and awful. And I don't know what possessed me to do it, because I'm not that person. But because I had known him for so long, I thought there's just no way I'm going to let you, talk yourself into this nonsense. And it was nonsense. It was nonsense. It was the flu. It was the flu that they were taking the numbers and putting it into the COVID camp. And if you know anything about microbiology or biophysics, the PCR test is not a differential test. It's only testing for dead nucleotides. It could be anything.
This is a really good example. I love that story, but also I think I've taken 2 COVID tests in my life, but now that I know what they're covered in, I will not be swabbing that inside my body, especially not near my brain.
Exactly. Amen to that. Yeah.
Rea, it reminded me of a story of, I can't speak to it probably as well as you can, but there was a research study where participants were sitting in front of a computer, a blank screen, and they were hooked up to different biomarkers, monitors, and they were able to tell within their system if they were going to be shown a picture of a war zone or a picture of a puppy. Are you familiar with that work?
Yes. So I believe that it was Dr. Gary Schwartz out of the University of Arizona that originally pioneered that work. And so it was a study on precognition. And so there have been other people that have done this type of research, but that's the one that really comes to mind for me, where they were able to prove that precognition does exist. And so then if you look at Heart Math Institute, they have sensors all over the planet where they're measuring coherence. And before actually 9/11 happened, there was a massive spike in the conscious response of humanity, which you can call a precognitive response. And as somebody who comes from a family, my grandmother had incredible precognitive abilities. My grandmother on her deathbed, which was exactly 33.3 years before the day COVID was announced, she was dying, and she predicted all of COVID, all of it. She predicted the lung thing. She predicted that wars would no longer be fought by machines, that they would be bioweapons. My grandmother, who had a grade 3 education, who couldn't speak English, predicted all of that. So precognition does exist, and it does. I feel like it does, though, that ability runs in family lines. So this is what Schwartz was investigating, and definitely conclusive results that we do have precognitive abilities.
Whoa. Oh my gosh, I got goosebumps. And as you were telling that story, I remember I heard a podcast one time. I forget this woman's name, but she has created the bidet called Tushy. That's her company. And she used to work in one of the Twin Towers. And the day that it went down, her alarm didn't go off. She didn't go to work that day. She was late.
Yeah.
And had she been on time,
Yeah.
she wouldn't be with us today. And I feel like
Yeah.
there are so many stories like that.
There are so many stories. There are so many. I watched a podcast where they talked about this, and I think might have been the Dr. Judy Wood podcast, where she talks about the energy behind what happened. And yes, there were I would say at least 100 or more people that just felt like, you know, they either couldn't get on the planes that day, or they couldn't go into work that day. There was just something stopping them from making the physical move to get up and out of their, you know, spaces to go to work. So there definitely is something where when a big like event like this is about to happen, there is an energy around it. There's a book called Egregores that talks about this, where our thought forms become these beings on the astral. You know, if you can create something in the astral, you can bring it into the physical. And so, like, again, another weird topic, but something, you know, some of your viewers might want to research is how our astral, the human astral, has been hijacked to the degree where a lot of this evil stuff that's being manifested in the world these past few years has come from hijacking the astral plane. So that when you go to manifest, you're bringing in stuff that we really don't want.
It also sounds really similar to calcifying the pineal gland with fluoride.
It really does. Yeah, in all the different ways. Anything. Well, I mean, fluoride is a byproduct of the aluminum industry. So, you know, the things that are being sprayed up in the sky, we know that there's aluminum in that, right? Aluminum, barium. There's God only knows what. They're drone planes. They don't make a sound, you know. And you can watch the sky, especially in a heavy populated city like Los Angeles or New York. There's a lot of plane activity. Sorry. Why is it some planes have trails and some don't? You know, that's, again, a critical thinking thing. And how do you explain that away? My stepdad was a pilot. And I mean, contrails look different. They don't turn into a bioslick ick film that then stretches across the sky and blocks out certain frequencies of the sun. Contrails don't do that. They dissipate very quickly. So like, again, it's just a critical thinking thing. Like, people lay on your back, look up at the sky, put away your phones and your TVs for a while, and just look up at the sky. Look up at the sky at night. We go out to my ranch, and there's like friends that'll come out, and we sit out there till like 3 a.m. Like, and watching the sky. There's stuff going on up there, and they're not satellites. Satellites don't do this, right? They move in a trajectory. There's things doing this. There was one thing 2 weeks ago, my husband and I were out there, and we saw this weird thing moving around, and we were yelling up at the sky, just like kids, right? You become a kid again. We're yelling up at the sky, blink, blink, blink. And this thing went really bright and really dim and really bright and really dim 3 times. Whatever it was, we freaked out. We were screaming. We were freaking out. We were acting like we were 5. Look up at the sky. There's cool stuff going on out there. It's consciousness. I just think it's beings of higher consciousness, things we don't understand. We didn't understand what a germ was 200 years ago when we were doctors were delivering babies, 150 years ago, and they didn't wash their hands. Yep. You don't know what you don't know, right?
That's right.
So to think that we know it all at this stage of the game in 2024 is just kind of comical. We know less than what there is to know, honestly.
I like that. I like the way you said that. There's something out there. There's something. And I want to believe that it's something good. I want to put that into the universe, that I'm not looking up at scary things that want to eat me and dissect me. I'm looking up at things that want to help bring me up to realizing what I really am, who I really am. So always put it, yeah. If anything wanted to eat us, we'd be eaten by now. Like, clearly, if you're higher intellect and higher intelligence and higher consciousness, like, that's not on your mind, right? Otherwise, we would have been food a long time ago. So don't let them put those kind of scary thoughts in your mind. It's not all that. The universe always conspires with us, never against us.
Yeah, right? Whatever you believe is what you conceive. Spend time with your kids. Go and borrow somebody else's kids to spend time with, for heaven's sakes. You know, spend time with families, be around loved ones, grow new friendships, read books, meditate, do yoga, go in nature, put your feet in the sand, go to the ocean. Like, all the things that probably other people say, but it's It's because that's what puts you back to you. It resets you. And so let this great reset be that we're going to reset our souls and get back on track with being the divine creatures that we are, and not let this be the great reset where we get taken down to the dark ages again.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And
I love that.
Yeah, like you can't have a great awakening without a grand deception. So figure out the grand deception, become wise to the lies, and shut the news off. There's nothing good on there anymore. Shut it off.
Oh my gosh, it's so funny. So my husband and I don't watch the news, and I remember when this was a few years ago. What's that? What's that cathedral in Europe somewhere that was on fire? Do you remember?
Notre Dame.
Yes.
Yeah.
So my husband's mom had said, "Oh, did you see that the Notre Dame cathedral was on fire?" And we're both like, "Nope." We missed that. Like,
Yeah.
we don't know anything that's going on. And I feel like Tim Ferriss, one of my favorite original podcasters, said, if it's important enough, you'll hear about it.
That's right. If it's important enough, the universe will bring it to you, for sure. I agree with that. So ask me when the last time I watched the news.
Okay, Rea, when was the last time you watched the news?
Grade 12. I always knew it was BS. I could feel the energy and the vibrations from the TV. I could just feel the lies. Have you ever wondered why on the news they never have stories about wonderful things like this person achieved this person did this? It's all, this one was murdered, this one was raped, this one was robbed. You don't think that, and that's what it was when I was a kid. Now it's high-tech frequencies of, where they're literally brainwashing people. Go to the uspto.gov website or the Canadian equivalent and look up any sort of like sound engineering, sound therapy, sound manipulation patents. My husband and I found 52 patents on the uspto.gov website for using brainwave frequencies to manipulate people. Some of them through TV broadcasts, some through radio broadcasts. They can send frequencies that put your mind in a hypnagogic state so that when they speak this into you, this becomes your reality, right? When you're a kid, roughly from ages 18 months to about 7, you're in hypnagogic brainwaves. You're in those theta brainwaves. And this is why a lot of people don't have deep memories of their early childhood, is because that's where you're in the programming phase. You're a brand new computer out of the box, and anything anybody speaks into you becomes the 95% of your subconscious that runs your program for the rest of your life. 5% you're aware of, 95% is the iceberg under the water. And so if they're using these frequencies to then put you into this hypnagogic brainwave, and then through repetition, right? Remember during COVID, all the repetition, it didn't matter what TV station you would flip to, they were all saying the exact same things, right? And all the same numbers. 33 people in hospital, 33 people died, 33, 33, 33. So once you hear it so many times, drink Coke, drink Coke, drink Coke, right? And they're playing these hypnagogic brainwave frequencies. So I thought, well, there's something to this, right? To this hypnotizing thing. So I went to the internet and I looked up, what are the statistics for people who could be hypnotized and people who can't? So there's roughly 10 to 15% of the population that cannot be hypnotized, no matter what. Those are the people that knew all of this was bullshit. Then there's, sorry for the cussing. Then there's, that's just me. Then there's that 20% at the top that are highly suggestible. They can be hypnotized very easily. Those are the ones that the hypnotists will take out of the audience and use for their shows. And then there's the people in between where there's like a range, right? So if you look at the uptake for the COVID vaccines, it matches those statistics exactly. So then we were absolutely brainwashed and manipulated. There's no doubt in my mind, no doubt. And it just depended where you were at in your consciousness. Were you highly aware of everything, or were you still in the process of waking up? So you maybe missed it for a little while, right?
I'm just loving this conversation. And when I was little, maybe like 10 or 11, my uncle, who's my biggest fan of my podcast, shout out, he listens to every episode. But I remember when I was little, I was playing softball and I really struggled to hit the ball when it was my turn up at bat. And he had taken some hypnotizing classes, and he said, I bet I can hypnotize you. And I was like, oh man, like I'm a 10-year-old, I just think of like that watch, that you see on TV. And I'm like, okay, you can hypnotize me. And I just remember lying down and he was speaking to me, and he has that radio DJ voice where you could just listen to him talk for hours. And I'll tell you what, Rea, it improved my game. I became much better at
There you
hitting the
go.
ball. And I feel like it's all coming full circle.
Right? So everything that's developed that you can use for good, just always remember on the flip side, there are folks out there that don't use it for good. So that's where we need to create this balance, this tipping balance in our human epigenetic field, is we need to get people tipped to the truth, tipped to good, right? So that evil doesn't use us to manifest, because it's clear that whatever is running the show can't manifest. It uses humans to manifest and bring evil into the world. We just need to stop buying into this agenda. Yeah.
Yes. And speaking of goodness, one of my favorite stories from another podcast was this woman had a son who had gone through a car accident, had a traumatic brain injury, and then he was in a coma. And every time that she and the doctors were in his room, they would talk about he wouldn't make a full recovery, he would probably never walk again, all these horrible things. And she said, we will never have those conversations where my son can hear them. We will go outside of his room if you ever say these things. And that was a rule for everyone who was working with her son. And every time that she was in the room with him, she would tell him to his comatose state, you will walk again. You will make a full recovery. And guess what? He made a full recovery.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's absolutely beautiful and absolutely true. So, you can take that one step further and just, for all the parents out there, speak those words of encouragement into your child that you want them to be, because it takes 10 attaboys for every you're no good. So every time you make a mistake and that kid feels like they've done something horribly bad or wrong, it will take 10 reinforcements of that negativity to change the tables. So you always want to speak those things into your children that you, and my dad did. I don't know how my dad knew this. My dad was not an educated man, but he had me convinced. He used to say to me, honey, if a man can do it, you can do it 10 times better. So I grew up with this like feeling or belief that I could just do anything. So like when my plumbing breaks, I don't hire a plumber. I figure it out. It's just a toilet. Like it's just a sink. It's not rocket science. And I mean, to a degree, right? Like I'm not going to build my own deck, but like, I guess what I'm saying is that quite often you can do these things yourself. You don't have to try to rely on the wits of someone else or thinking that other people outside of you are smarter. Anything and everything, we're all born equal. It's just what you do with it. I don't really believe that, that there's even this disparity between IQ that they would have us believing. It's just how much you develop it. And it's through the intuitive process that you develop your IQ too. It isn't through memorizing and regurgitating, because that's not intelligence. That's just memorizing and regurgitating. True intelligence is when you can read something and then add to it. What can you come up with in your creativity that you can now add to what you've just read? That's intelligence. So train your kids to be critical thinkers, not to be regurgitators. If they're not getting A's at school, man, I would give them like rewards for that, because that to me just means maybe they're more of a critical thinker and the teacher doesn't appreciate it.
That's right.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's so good. What's his name? He was the guy who wrote Kill Bill. What's his name?
Oh,
do you know his...
I can't remember his name, but I know who you're talking about.
Oh man. Oh man, I forget his name, but I listen to a podcast called Founders, which I absolutely love. And so I forget that guy's name who wrote Kill Bill and several others. But he got the worst grades because he thought that he had these ideas of what school should look like. And he's like, shouldn't kids be like writing plays and coming up with ideas?
Yeah.
And he got the worst grades, but he's such a creative mind.
Well, for sure. Many geniuses were kicked out of school because they didn't fit the sit in your desk, be quiet. They're when you're really bright, you tend to be wiggly. You tend to wiggle a lot and you want to move. You're a mover. And sitting still, again, is just a way of stagnating that energy. We should have schools where kids can be kinetic, where they're moving, not sitting in desks. Walk around and talk about your ideas. Be free thinkers, share information. like, I would love to get in. My mom was a teacher, so I saw it from her classroom level, right? She taught grade 4. And so we used to carpool when I was in high school, and I would drive her to work in the morning, and then I would come back, and I would, any kids that were, either there for detention or had to stay after class to get some work done, like, I was kind of their supervising babysitter, I guess you could say. And so I kind of saw it from both sides, because my mom was a little bit more like me, more of a free thinker. And she would use things like art and music to get people out of their shells, and just very intuitive. And so I saw how other teachers dealt with it, and then I saw how my mom dealt with it, and bringing those kids. And sometimes she just kept a kid after school because she could see that they needed that one-on-one personal attention that they weren't getting maybe at home. And so, and so she developed ways of sort of revolutionizing things. She came up with this really cool flip card system to teach kids who couldn't understand math how to get into understanding math through art, through an artistic concept, rather than it being this scary, like, black and white kind of thing. It made it more gray. And so those kids that were really struggling in math. Like I say, I sort of come from families where we were real problem solvers. It was never, sit and bitch and complain about a problem. It was, how are we going to fix this? So I think wiring your kids to solve their own problems is probably another, good thing for parents to want to look at.
I love that. I couldn't agree more. I'm really glad you brought that up, because I have a lot of mom friends, a lot of mom listeners. And
Great.
Also, it was Quentin Tarantino.
Of course. Thank you. Yeah, I couldn't remember. I could see his kind of face, but it's like, oh yeah, he's done so many bizarre movies like Pulp Fiction, and yeah.
Yes, so many. So, Rea, I could talk to you for hours. This has been so refreshing. I love it. I'm so thankful for your time. But as we wrap up this podcast, I ask all my guests the same closing question, which is, what haven't I asked you that you'd like my listeners to know?
Oh, so maybe just a little bit more about the classes that I teach. And if you're interested in learning an energy-based modality that actually does work, it does do stuff, and you will see results, that they can absolutely look me up, and I'm happy to chat with them and give them whatever info they need. I'm working on getting the lecture portion of classes online so that people will be able to do that part of it, at least at their own convenience. And then even if they don't want to travel to Calgary, we can do the practicum part of it through live streaming. And so we're beta testing a bunch of stuff with that. So we'll fairly soon be accessible to the world, not just the close proximities. I do have a website. It's infinitebiofieldmedicine.com. And they can reach me also by email at infiniteenergy@shaw.ca.
Amazing. So amazing. And also, do you have any practitioners working underneath you so that in the event your schedule's so booked, you can point them in the right direction?
Totally. Yeah. I have been certifying practitioners. I have a few of them up on the website, but I will be getting more up over the next couple of weeks. So yeah, if my calendar is booked out, then absolutely. Or even if it's not, you might connect with somebody else that's on the practitioners page. Definitely look them up. And what's great is that every practitioner that takes the infinite energy method, they have their own gifts and abilities. So this is, they've developed their own superpowers. So maybe they were a nurse, or maybe they were a doctor, or maybe they were a psychologist. They have other skills that they bring to the table. So this is where it sort of takes like again, a community to get everybody in the right space. And so, yeah, never feel like you always have to connect with me. Like, these other people have their own interesting and beautiful things that they bring to the table. So, and they will be well versed in the infinite energy method. So they'll be able to help you with your sound healing needs.
Yeah, you can use your own tuition to pick your own practitioner.
That's right. Yeah, look at everybody's pictures, and yeah, just see what kind of a vibe you get from looking at the person's face, and then that's how I do it. I go and I want to see everybody's picture, and it's like, oh, that person warms my heart. I'm going to try her, or I'm going to try him. So yeah, like use whatever it is that you've got inside of you, and go with it.
Amazing. Such beautiful advice. I could talk to you for so long. I really appreciate you donating your time today. Rea, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Ashley. It's been absolutely my pleasure, and I will look forward to listening to and watching more of your podcasts as well. I can't wait.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Bye, Rea.
Bye.